been on. The place that's the killer of the people.
What hip hop taught me was so many things. I can't even really, fathom on where to start. But what hip hop taught me was 5 things, and 5 critical things that actually really shaped and molded me throughout life. The first thing hip hop taught me was unity. Hip hop taught me unity because, growing up in the city of Baltimore, I learned that unity was a big thing back in the, like 79 and 80s. For Baltimore, it was a big thing, especially for hip hop. I mean, you had old school cats like, the We Rock crew, there was DJ Terry T, Ipsen Universe, and Jeffrey G. And you had a lot of hosts of other groups, like a pioneer rapper by the name of MCG Freeze. He's my cousin. He was with a group called the Fresh MCs. They were from the east side of Baltimore. You also had the Power Force crew. You had Charm City crew. You had a lot of different groups. You had the DJs. You had DJ Vicious V. Rest in peace. You had DJ Charlie Crush, who's still around rocking. You had DJ Dangerous D. Of course, you had DJ CJ Fresh. I could go on and on. But hip hop taught me unity, because when it came to getting together at like the rec centers and really, being the b-boy, breakdancing, like I started out doing, it was a whole entire movement of unity. You had neighborhoods, you had your crews battle other crews. Of course, you had like Harlem Park battling, Madison Park, meaning we was like, Lennox and, Callow and all of us at Whitelock, so those are just like examples of Baltimore history, when it came to the rivalry. But it was all love, because they all, hung out together. So, coming up around that time, I was about 14 or 15, and, that's where I saw unity in hip hop. So, if I had to ask what was one of the critical things hip hop taught me, that's a tricky one. The second thing hip hop taught me, I would have to say the second thing that hip hop taught me was, hip hop taught me how to communicate. And that's a very, very, that's a very broad thing to say, but hip hop taught me how to communicate, because, back in the day, I wasn't really verbal about a lot. I was, I moved from, I was born in Philly, half raised in Trenton, on the outskirts of Pennsylvania, in a little town called Morrisville, because Trenton was too bad, so I ended up moving from that little town Morrisville into Baltimore, which was pretty much worse. But my mom lived down here. But and I was a very quiet kid. I didn't really say a lot. You know what I mean? I stayed to myself. I read my comic books. I was into Marvel comics and stuff like that. And I used to draw with my buddy named Daryl Fun. You know what I mean? Who's an amazing artist, and he's into the poetry scene real heavy. Shout out to Daryl Brown, Mr. Fun, aka Mr. Fun. I was a quiet kid back then, you know what I mean? And really, I've always been into hip hop. And when I got into hip hop, like I said, when I moved to Baltimore, Baltimore was all about the club scene, and everything, but I was always into the hip hop, just like the We Rock crew, old school. My cousin MCG Freeze, he was a part of the group called the Fresh MCs. So again, I was a quiet, kid, and hip hop taught me how to communicate, because I was always infatuated with the way that the rappers, that I heard actually were able to articulate and speak what was on their mind, man, and the command of having people listen to it. that was amazing to me. So hip hop definitely taught me how to communicate. And I'll say there were a lot of rappers, a lot of MCs rather, but the MC that absolutely inspired me to really take rap seriously and write my first serious rap was no other than Grandmaster Melly Mel. You know what I mean? When I heard Grandmaster Melly Mel, when it was the message for me, you know what I mean? And I heard every word that he said, and not only did I hear it, and this was before I even saw the video, you know, every time I heard the message from Grandmaster, it was Melly Mel's voice that I could relate to. I felt like Melly Mel was talking about where I lived at, and he was from New York, you know what I mean? So for me, you know, the gift that hip hop gave me, and it's a gift from God, period, because again, nobody taught me how to rap, you know. I actually just started writing a couple lines. I can remember writing a couple lines, and every time I heard Grandmaster Melly Mel's verse and the message, you know what I mean? Broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the station, no, they just don't care. Can't take the smell, can't take the noise. Got my mother doing loud, I guess I got no choice. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley with the baseball bat. I tried to get away because I couldn't get far, because a man with a tow truck repossessed my car. You know, it's like I saw that, I heard it, and he was absolutely, you know, personifying the chorus of don't push me, because I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Now, mind you, I was 12 or 13 listening to this, and to me, it spoke to me so much that I had to try to write something like that. You know what I mean? And that's why I can definitely say hip-hop taught me how to communicate, because believe it or not, in communicating, I remember I wrote my first rap for health. In health class, I used to beatbox with my homeboy Sean in middle school. We used to go to Lamel, and we used to actually, he used to beatbox in the bathroom in the corner, so there was a lot of acoustics in the bathroom. So I would go in the bathroom and rap right after lunch class, and I was always late to health class. And we had this white health teacher, I forgot her name, but she was a white health teacher, and me and Sean was always known for being late. And the funny thing was that she couldn't understand why. Well, she caught me and Sean in the bathroom, coming out of the bathroom, but she also saw us in the cafeteria when she would come down there to get her lunch on our lunch break. She would see everybody crowded around me and Sean when he was beatboxing, and everybody would be cheering, and I'd be rapping, you know. And it was funny because she called me out. She said, "Now I know why you late to my class all the time." She said, "You know what? Since you're late to my class, your homework is going to be to write a one-page rap on health." And when she told me that, it was funny. I ain't sweating. I wrote the rap right in class when she told me after I came into class late. And I wasn't even sweating the rap. Next day, she literally said, "Hey, you got my rap?" I came right in the classroom. And I gave it to her, and I ain't say nothing. And like I said, I was one of the quiet kids, but I could rap, you know. So she read it, and I never forget. Her eyes were amazed. She was like, "I want you to come up here and say this." And I was like, "Huh?" And it was crazy. She said, "I want you to come up and say this. I am amazed. You got to say this." And you know, it was funny. I said, "Well, I ain't got no beat." It was funny. But my boy Sean said, "Yo, I got you." So he came up, and I never forget. I read the rap off the paper too. I read it off the paper because I had just wrote it. So keep in mind that hip hop taught me how to be able to communicate, because believe it or not, I wasn't good as far as speaking in front of people. I was terrified of it. And you would think that a rapper who's not used to rapping in front of people basically is just a songwriter. But I actually did the rap in front of the class. And here's the crazy thing: my boy Sean was beatboxing for me, right? And what was crazy was we had the entire whole third, I think it was, we had periods in class. We had the whole third period who was supposed to be coming in her health class. We had them packed outside along with everybody at the front and back door. And the whole classroom was up and listening to the rap, and Sean was beatboxing and I was rapping the rap on the paper about health. I was using all of the health terms, and it was amazing. And she gave me an A for that in that classroom. And I was failing her class just because of me being late, not doing the health work, but I understood it. So if I had to really say anything about what hip hop taught me, the second thing, hip hop definitely taught me how to communicate. The third thing hip hop taught me was about business. Hip hop taught me about business and entrepreneurship. Hip hop definitely taught me about that. And pretty much hip hop taught me about business and entrepreneurship, you know, during the late 80s to early 90s. And that was pretty much when I graduated high school in 1990, you know, and during that time, you know, hip hop taught me about business and entrepreneurship, because a lot of, you know, hip hop at that time basically was the golden era of hip hop from 90s on around, like down. So like 90, 97, 98, 90, between that time. So hip hop taught me about business and entrepreneurship because, of course, you know, I used to watch a lot of videos and video clips and everything, and I used to always hear about, you know, rappers wanting to get signed to record deals and stuff like that, and the hype of the record industry at the time was very big about, you know, hey, you know, you got your record out, you know, you have your face on posters, they're hearing your music on radio. But the business side for me and the entrepreneurship side was seeing people with, you know, their own clothing line, you know what I mean, their own logos on their shirts. Like, and I'm talking about way back in the days where you had cats who had customized graffiti shirts, you know, they had airbrush shirts, you know, and you could go to a mall if you know, went to the right spot and get a brother who knows how to do mad good graffiti, you know what I mean? And they would airbrush your shirts with different things on it, you know. So that was a part of hip hop, you know what I mean? So even though, you know, you hear rappers wear Adidas, they wore Nikes, they wore Pumas, you know what I mean? When you had something custom done with your with a picture of you or your name on it, like especially if it was airbrush or spray painted, oh, that was entrepreneurship, you know. So what I started doing was I started learning the business about hip hop, because that's what taught me to do my own graphics, you know, for all of my, you know, covers that I wanted to do, like my posters that I wanted to do, you know. It taught me how to actually, you know, get my posters all printed, you know, if I wanted to take them to stores, do flyers and things of that nature. And, you know, it also taught me the business about the music, about the recording, about how much you could make, you know. By that time CDs were out, you know. So I learned about the CDs, you know, how you could print them up. I started, you know, buying blank CDs, you know, and, you know, burning them and doing things of that nature, you know. So hip hop definitely taught me the business and entrepreneurship. Now, the grind was a whole different story as far as that business and entrepreneurship, because, you know, I wasn't on no big scale out there doing no music. I was just staying in the crib, you know, building, you know, my record label, New Level Entertainment. And I was doing so much at the time that, you know, I stayed focused on doing everything myself, primarily because I didn't really have any support. Everybody was kind of on their grind, doing their own thing. I didn't have no big clique. I had homies that was in the game rapping too, but a lot of my homies that were rapping, they were hustling, so they were out there hustling, really out there getting it on the street. I wasn't hustling. I was like, shoot, this rap music is keeping me off the street. All I did was I made my music, I had my tape on me, and we went out and we wanted to go to maybe a strip club, or we just wanted to go hang out or something like that. All I did was, I was the cool cat. I went with the homies, they had to ride. I had some money in my pocket. We went and got some 40s, smoked some weed. I popped my music in the car and just want to hear my stuff bump, and they like it. You know what I mean? So that was kind of my way of getting my music, heard through the homies and stuff, because they was like, yo, my boy can rap, so we was at an open mic or something like that. They would want me to get on the mic and, they would want to rap. But of course you had the local cats who were already sold up in the game. So I was just kind of, moving, just like accordingly, like a G, just playing my position, listening to dudes out there and the crews that was rocking, they started hearing about me, and again, that's when I had a studio. So again, with the studio being the part of the music business, that was the recording. I had to get me a studio. I was like hustle and flow during the 90s, but at that time, I was charging for studio time. I had the homies coming over, staying till 6 o'clock in the morning recording, you know what I mean? So not only did hip hop teach me the business and entrepreneurship through the music, but it also taught me the business and entrepreneurship through doing the graphics, my own graphics. To me, that was like a graffiti on a computer, so that was dope. And it taught me that, and it was a skill that I actually just was self-taught, and I just got better at it and better at it, and pretty soon I had dudes coming to me like, yo, how much you charge for a CD? Yo, how much you charge to do a CD cover for me? You know what I mean? And the dudes that were coming to me were dudes that were already out, really making moves, locally in the city. You know what I mean? So if I say, if I had to say the third thing that hip hop taught me by far was definitely the business and the entrepreneurship. The fourth thing hip hop taught me was the hip hop taught me about, it taught me about, honestly, it taught me about a lot about West Coast gangster life and just, gangster life all around. Hip hop definitely taught me about that because, growing up in Baltimore, like I said, we had our own culture, of, the OGs and gangsters and things of that nature. So hip hop taught me about the gangster culture. And I mean from the perspective of the West Coast. I'm talking about the perspective of down south, which my big homie Dre, God rest his soul, Birmingham Dre, he was the baller, you know what I mean? So I learned the actual culture of the gangster life, you know what I mean? And, hustlers, like I said, they were always in Baltimore, but when it came to that real gangster life, you know what I mean? Hip hop taught me about that because I actually listened to all of the records in hip hop, like a lot of underground stuff. And believe it or not, a lot of hip hop artists, that I was really gravitating to was from the South, like, Scarface and the Ghetto Boys, Big Mike. I was down with, Suave, House, Tila, 8 Ball, MJG, Crown Boss, Mr. Mike, Suave House, South Circle, and I was down with a lot of dudes from the South, of course, Goody Mob, from ATL, then, a dude named Ron C, and then I was down with, RBL Posse, like from the West Coast, and hell, even from the Bay. I was down with Too Short, I was down with E40, you know what I mean? So I learned all about them cats from the South, and what was funny was that a lot of stuff that they were talking about, and a lot of people often refer, when they talk about gangster rap, they talk about Tupac. Well, you gotta remember my homie Mouse Man, you know, of course he's executive vice president of New Level Entertainment, and Tupac would have been around the same age as me right now, and I'll be, 50. So Tupac grew up in Baltimore, and Tupac used to rap with my cousin. He used to rap with my cousin Chad, and my president of New Level Entertainment, DJ Fella, Darrell Brown. Back then his name was Icy Fella. My cousin's name Chad, he was Chili Chad G. So they used to rap with Tupac, and of course Mouse Man, Dana Mouse Man Smith, Wicked Mouse Man, that's what they call him. Him and Pac, and they started out rapping in Baltimore. You know what I'm saying? So I actually never met Pac, but back then Pac wasn't doing no gangster rap. You know what I mean? Pac was all about conscious rap, when they was doing the babies having babies, that was their raps they were doing back then. And of course, when Pac, around 88, I believe, Mouse told me, said around 88, Pac was going to New York, because he was going, said he was going to pursue making a record, and he got into acting up there. Well, by that time, like I said, I was still in Baltimore doing my thing, but it was still, I was in the culture of gangster life, the 80s, like Baltimore was Charm City, but Baltimore was, it was thugged out. You had Murphy Homes versus Lexington Terrace, that was all downtown. You had Park Heights, that was always uptown west side. You had the east side of Baltimore. You had Old York and McCabe, and that's east side. And then you had another part of east side where it was way down by Federal Street, Moffett and Federal. Then you had a lot of different places. There were different pockets of areas in Baltimore, east and west, that was all about that life. So if you want to know about Baltimore and you want to see The Wire is just a glimpse of how rough Baltimore was back in the 80s. And I was living back that time, and I was living here, and it was worse than The Wire. The Wire just captured it as genuine as they could. And believe it or not, when The Wire came out, every city started being like, whoa, Baltimore like that? And we like, yo, it's worse. You know what I mean? But again, hip hop taught me about the gangster life and the gangster culture, because listening to the music, a lot of stuff that those rappers said back in that time, back in the 80s, that was real stuff that they were saying. And believe it or not, it goes back to what I said before as far as the second thing that hip-hop taught me about, communication. Hip-hop taught me how to communicate, and the gangster culture and the gangster life, you know what I mean, was a way that a lot of cats who probably weren't in the gangster life, but they were around dudes who were in it like I was. So essentially, you had a lot of dudes who were, homeboys of gangsters, and then eventually it started being gangsters or just some thugs. They just started rapping. They were doing it for the fun of it. Some of them were really good at it. And they started communicating what they did, they would talk about selling these amount of drugs and quarters and keys, and, talk about what they did. And see, back then, literally, it was all about just expressing your reality of where you lived and what was going on. So essentially, hip-hop taught me, like I said, about the gangster culture, and about the gangster life. And essentially for me, I was just a journalist in my hood, just telling cats what's going on. Hey, around here this happened, around there that happened. And we were just kind of the 411 for the streets through the music. And that's all it was. But somewhere along the line, I learned in the gangster culture also, because, again, I'm not a street dude, but I grew up around the street code. And I understand, when you got some of the hustlers, they say, hey, man, you know what I do. I know who's selling drugs. I know where they at. But again, I'm just one of the ones that's in the neighborhood, so I just happen to be the cool one. But somewhere along the line from being the hip hop journalist for the hood, there was a fine line of snitching. And really, the thing with the snitching, stop snitching, that started in Baltimore. People don't realize that. That whole stop snitching movement started in Baltimore here. Because again, you had people who would stand up, to, drug activity or gangsters or whatever. And there would be the old people and the old heads and stuff. And believe it or not, it was a family called the Dawson family. They were here in Baltimore, and they got firebombed because the Dawson family was a very respectable family, on the east side of Baltimore. And what happened was, I think I believe some drug dealers retaliated because they bombed the Dawson family's house for actually telling on the drug dealers around there. Now again, that was just a culture of where you had neighbors and older generations who stood up and say, hey, don't sell this around the block, because that was the culture of Baltimore. If you hustled, you knew you hustled up the block, but you ain't hustled in front of nobody's house. But during that time, that was like in the, probably like 90s, mid 90s, and things started getting bad, and the code that was supposed to be for hustling or you was out there as a gangster, the code started just being violated completely. So again, in the music, like I was saying before, the gangster culture, I learned about that in hip hop because again, we used to tell it like it is and just tell the truth. But there was only but so much you could say in a rap song if you were the one who abided by that G code. I mean, I don't care if you were just a dude telling the journalism or whatever the case is. There were certain things that you did not say. There were certain things you didn't say. And hip hop taught me that because I learned that it wasn't just cool to be rapping about somebody or dissing somebody, because if you diss somebody, like on the East Coast, dissing somebody was just on record, at times. But depending on who you rapped about or what the beef was, it was real beef. But on the West Coast, you call somebody out, that's a threat. So if it's a threat, they coming to handle it. They ain't rapping. You know what I'm saying? They coming to ride, And the same thing down south. And down south is a lot worse because down south is funny because down there, people think and always thought that the South was really slow compared to the fast upper pace city. Well, a lot of dudes in the South, you know what I'm saying, they laid back and they'll get you when you least expect it. You know what I'm saying? They ain't gonna be no rah-rah. So I learned that just from being down there with my big homie Dre, in Birmingham, the west side of Birmingham, Bessemer, you know what I'm saying? And then the east side of Birmingham was crazy, and they was all about, west side MOB, that's what my big homie Dre was, they repped him, down there. But like I said, God rest his soul, he did some big things, and, unfortunately when he moved to Vegas and stuff, and everything was legit for him. He was in the business doing things, and he just unfortunately got twisted. But yeah, overall, man, the one thing I know that hip hop taught me, and that's the fourth thing, is about the gangster culture. You know what I mean? And just what goes on in it. So when you write your lyrics of being a gangster rapper or whatever the case is, just be mindful. You are going to be held accountable to the lyrics you write, and you're going to have to show and prove what you say. So it's not all about, oh, this is just artistic expression or whatever the case is. This is the reality of the words you speak, and people are going to take those words serious, especially street dudes. Now, on the other hand, as far as like people, in the actual music industry saying, oh, this music is too violent or whatever, with the gangster culture was just a raw, unscripted, uncut way of really, painting a true picture of what goes on in, the neighborhood that those rappers live in. You know what I mean? It was unscripted because it never got the attention of the, media unless something was really bad going on that was just absolutely notorious. But in reality, that's why, you know, rappers like Ice Cube from NWA, they started rapping about their hood, you know, but everybody's been rapping about the same thing in their regions throughout the decades, you know what I mean? And it's just that it never got the ear of mainstream America only until the record industries realized that, hey, this crazy barbaric rap, it can sell millions and they can make money off of it. So again, that goes back to what I learned about like the business and entrepreneurship and, you know, what hip hop taught me, but it also ties into the gangster culture and you learning about it, you know what I mean, in the actual music. So that's what hip hop taught me. And they all tie together, man. You know what I'm saying? From the first thing, like I said, the unity, you know, then the communication, then the business and actual entrepreneurship, and then the actual gangster culture, you know, believe it or not, they all tie together, you know, and pretty much that's what hip hop taught me. Those are the 4 things hip hop taught me. The 5th thing that hip hop taught me finally, hip hop taught me about diversity. Hip hop taught me about diversity because it was just mind-blowing to me about, you know, just being a part of the hip hop culture. You know, the diversity in hip hop was just absolutely mind-blowing. Because of course, you know, hip hop was started in, you know, the Bronx, you know, and with, you know, Latino culture, you know, Puerto Ricans, you know, Spanish, you know, people that were, you know, from, you know, New York. And of course, you know, African American people, was a lot of them were, you know, Jamaican culture, of course, you know, Kool Herc, you know, so you had the Jamaican influence in hip hop as the foundation. You had the Spanish, you know, influence in hip hop, you know what I mean? And of course, you got the black people, you know, just the black brothers in hip hop. And that was just the core foundation of it. But what was crazy is that in the foundation of hip hop, if you go back through the hip hop history, you would really legitimately find that hip hop has gotten so broad, you know, not just with the culture that was born in the Bronx, you know, with Spanish culture, like I said, African American culture, and, you know, again, you know, Jamaican culture, which is Caribbean, but the UK overseas, you know what I mean? They were actually a part of the hip hop culture too. They actually were a part of the hip hop sound. So that's all the way on another continent. And that's crazy. But not only that, in the UK, as hip hop, you know, got more popular, man, hip hop just diversified to Japan. It diversified to India, literally in the continent of Africa. You know, it actually had already kind of diversified to Africa. But what amazed me was hip hop diversified to Japan. And oh my goodness, Japan just kind of just took it and went crazy with it and created their own culture. I never heard a Japanese or Korean rapper or Chinese rapper. Again, you have rappers like Jin, you know what I'm saying? You also have rappers like my man, you know, is Jin, and then is of course I forgot his name, you know, forgive me, but you know what I'm saying? China Mac, that's his name. I love China Mac. China Mac he's a real Chinese gangster, you know what I'm saying? And he grew up in, you know, like Chinatown, you know, and, you know, just in New York. And Jen is one of those, he's pretty much like a backpack rapper, you know what I mean? But he's dope, he's now a Christian hip hop artist like I am, so, but Jen and China Mac are two examples of how diverse the hip hop culture has become. And we're not even talking about white rappers like Eminem or whatever the case is, or MGK, or starting back in the day, you think about rappers like Vanilla Ice, you ain't talking about them. We're talking about like back even when there were cats, Irish rappers, like you got the House of Pain, you know what I'm saying? Everlast, the House of Pain. They were Irish rappers, you know what I mean? And really dope rappers. Of course, you had Third Base, they were, New York based rappers too, but they were two white dudes, MC Search and, Pete Nice. So, and again, going back to the culture of, Spanish rappers, Hispanic rappers, heck, you had Cypress Hill, and they was from the West Coast. And I thought they were East Coast rappers from New York. They were from West Coast and they were gangbangers. So, again, the diversity is what hip hop taught me, and it was so amazing because, I could go on and on. I think about the Foosh people forgot about them. Foosh like West Indies rappers. And of course you had Tribe Called Quest. I think Phife Dawg was from the West Indies too. I think so. I'm not sure, but I know Foosh were. Yeah, they was crazy. I love Foosh but yeah, the diversity of hip hop is what hip hop taught me. And not only the diversity with hip hop, but the diversity of hip hop crossing over into mainstream, like hip hop and R&B. You got like people like Mary J. Blige and Method Man. They were actually doing hip hop together. You know what I'm saying? They did a hip hop song together. Mary J. was singing, and Meth was rapping on it. You're All I Need. They did a own version of Tammy Terrell and daggone Marvin Gaye. That was dope. So singing, rapping was always an actual combination in hip hop. Ever since Curtis Blow singing, If I Ruled the World, and on down to 8 Million Stories, on down to rappers old school like the Crash Crew. They would harmonize and rap. You know what I mean? So again, the diversity is what hip hop taught me, and it's pretty much gotten so diverse now that hip hop has evolutionized into a more. It's more than just a culture. The actual, diversity of hip hop has created a universal language in music, and that's the thing that's really amazing to me, and that's why I say if I had to really pick the fifth thing that hip hop taught me, hip hop definitely taught me about diversity, which pretty much keeps me creative and keeping me creating the music that I do. And yeah, those are the 5 things that hip hop taught me. Yeah, I'm your man, Mr. C Now, Notorious and Lyrical Expression, New Level Entertainment. If you want to check out my music, you can go to mrcnow.wixsite.com/Nile2018. Check out all of my music. It's on the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, Tidal. And like I said, all of my music is pretty much all of my Christian hip-hop music, so you can definitely check out my latest project that I have out right now, the first tri-digital album called Trinity. That's a tri-digital download album that you can all check out. So, yeah, thank you all for having me here at What Hip Hop Taught Me. And just want to say, stay positive, stay safe. Peace.